Do you ever wonder how some of your peers got onto the DClinPsy? Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new around here, my name is Sharon and I'm a trainee clinical psychologist, and in today's video I'm going to be asking all of your juicy questions and spilling the tea on what training is like what it's actually like. I'm going to be answering all of your questions, so let's just get into it. So the first one is, does it really live up to the hype it gets? And I think the course is put on such a pedestal that nothing will compare to those expectations. And I think when I went into training, I thought that I was going to be taught how to be a clinical psychologist. I thought that teaching would be, you know, how to treat someone with depression or with anxiety, which it partly is. We do get taught, you know, interventions and formulation, but actually that was only a couple of my teaching days, and the rest of it is less kind of didactic, and it's more I don't know if this is just because my course is quite reflective, but it is very reflective and thinking about the context people are in, which is really useful, but it's just very different to what I thought training would be like. But in terms of the hype, like, I feel so blessed every day, and I know I sometimes complain about the course being busy, but I really do enjoy it. I think, no, it doesn't live up to the hype, but I love it, and it's still a worthwhile course to be on, and you know, you get to experience so much. Like, you're changing placements every 6 months, and obviously the privilege of being paid to learn is amazing. So I think, like, it really depends on what your expectations are, but for the most part I think it doesn't live up to the hype, that it's still amazing, if that makes sense. The next question is, what don't you like? I don't like how much they think we can put on our plate, and when I say this, I mean we have a lot going on, and then sometimes we're still asked to do additional things like volunteer for things and attend certain meetings, or it would be really nice to have a trainee sat there, and it's like, we don't really have the time. So that's kind of the main thing that I don't like, is that the demands are so high and then sometimes more is asked of us. I don't think I feel contained a lot of the time when I'm on training, and that's one thing I don't like, and I don't know if that's like a me problem or whatever, but I think because training is so full on and you've got so many different things to do, it would be quite hard to contain all of that stuff. So I think that's another thing that I don't like. And I also don't like this cycle of starting a new placement, feeling incompetent, and then finally feeling competent and then having to leave again, like another thing that I'm really struggling with at the moment. So someone else asked, is it everything you thought it would be? So yeah, like I said in the first question, not really, to be honest, but that's not to say that I don't like it. Is the pay worth the workload? So if you don't know, trainee clinical psychologists are paid a band 6. For me, I think the fact that we don't have to pay for our course and that we're getting paid to move around placement and learn, I think it is worth the workload. Now, maybe other people would dispute that, but I think from like my own like life experience and my background, like, that's a lot of money. Yes, I do work evenings. Yes, I basically do overtime every single week, which is problematic, and I don't know if it should be normalised as much as it is, but I'm happy with the pay. Do course leaders tell/advise you on what you can and can't post on social media about the course? I've never had anyone tell me what I can or can't put on social media. I think they know that I'm an adult and that I'm a professional, and they basically just say, you know, make sure you keep yourself safe and read the policy and the guidance on social media. So if you haven't watched my video on like using social media as a psychologist, then go watch that, because that was quite eye-opening for me, and I think it has changed the way that I use social media a little bit. But no, they've never told me what to do, and also I think, like, you know, it's my own personal time. While I'm at work, they do have some kind of say over what might be appropriate, but they can't tell me what to do outside of work. I don't think I would ever say anything specific about the particular course that I'm on, just because I don't think that's very fair. I don't feel very comfortable doing that, so I think that's another way that I kind of like safeguard myself. Do they train you on how to deliver sessions, or do they just leave you to it? I think it's more so the latter. Like, we have done a few role plays in class, but it's never been like, okay, so this is what questions to ask, or like, this is how you interact with the client. It's not like that. It's very much, you know, here's how you do a formulation with a client, here's some of the intervention that you might use. And then on placement is where you do most of your learning, and that's typically through your supervisor watching you and you watching your supervisor, and using supervision to kind of reflect on what you need to do next time, or what you could try. How stressful is balancing the work-based and educational demands? It comes and it goes, definitely. Like, I think my body has taken most of the toll of the stress. I know that we're living in a pandemic kind of era, but I have had a cough on and off, and it's not COVID, for like the past 6 months. I'm pretty sure it's my immune system just not being able to work at its best because of the workload and the stress. But saying that, like, I was able to go to the Philippines for 2 weeks and completely switch off. I had another couple of holidays as well, and I've got another one coming up. So I think there are periods where it can be really stressful, and there are periods where I am working weekends on assignments and evenings. But that's not all of the time, and I think that's what helps me to get through it. I do feel quite well supported, and if I did say to my course tutor, like, you know, I'm really struggling, then I'm pretty sure they would just let me have a late submission and it would be fine. What is the teaching reading placement time like, or what is the typical week like? For most courses, you have 2 days on teaching and then 3 days on placement. For my particular course, we haven't been given much like essential reading. I do reading every single week because of placement, and also for my own personal interest and needing to prepare myself for some teaching, but there's nothing that's like you have to do it, and so it doesn't feel that stressful in terms of reading. How have you been balancing romantic relationships and the doctorate? I'm lucky because my boyfriend is very like understanding and knows that sometimes like I can't be going out as I used to. Sometimes I'm quite, you know, stressed, and so not very nice to be around. But also I make sure to prioritize my relationships, and that's not only my like relationship with my boyfriend, but also with my mum and my friends. I try my hardest to do that, but they're all very aware of how busy I am, and so it's about that communication of, you know, like, I'm here for you guys, and if there's anything that, you know, if there's an emergency, then I'm 100% here, but I can't go out every weekend or every evening like I used to. Not that I used to go out every evening, that's a complete lie, but I mean like most weekends, like I can't go out as much as I used to, and so, you know, I think communication is key. I still think it's very important to keep those connections because they're your support system. And so, for example, like if I'm in the car, I'll call someone and I'll have a FaceTime every evening. And if I'm not living back at home with my mum, then I'd be FaceTiming her like every day. So even if it is for just 5 minutes, so I definitely squeeze in those pockets of connection. Do you ever wonder how some of your peers got onto the DClinPsy? Gosh, you guys really want me to spill the tea here, don't you? Actually, for the most part, my cohort, they're all amazing. Obviously, we all don't see eye to eye, like that would just be impossible. We're a cohort of 32 now, so, you know, we wouldn't be able to see eye to eye, and that's all I'm gonna say on that. You know, everyone has got their skills. I mean, there have been times where people have said stuff where I'm like, oh, like, is that, I don't know if I agree with that, especially as someone who's meant to be a healthcare professional, but I've never thought like, you know, you don't deserve a place on training. I've never thought that about any of my course. Favourite and least favourite elements of the course. I'm just going to give like 1 or 2 examples. So my favourite element of the course is, actually I've got to, so my favourite element is being connected with like amazing trainees, and my course, I don't know, I just really love being in teaching around everyone. Everyone's really passionate about what they're doing, and it's just nice to have that support system. Like, I've never had that many psychology friends, and now I do, and I love that part. As much as I hate moving placements, I really like moving around and learning about different areas and services, because it keeps me on my toes. My least favourite element at the moment is the small scale research project. I'm actually enjoying my thesis because it's something I'm really interested in. My small scale research project, I mean, it's an audit, so even though it's about something that I'm quite passionate about, it's an audit, you know, so like, how can you be excited about an audit? Does the course push you straight to the deep end with work? I think this definitely depends on your course. With my course, they did, in terms of, we had like a month of like settling in, but then our first assignment was the biggest assignment that we will do apart from our thesis. So we had to do our literature review, which was like 10,000 words. That's a lot, guys, for like, I haven't written an academic piece of work in like 2 and a bit years. For the first month you're in teaching from 10 till 5, so yeah, it is pretty pretty intense. How well supported do you feel on the course? I've got loads of support on the course actually. So I've got my mentor that's done through the uni, so she's a qualified clinical psychologist, and that's for people from a minoritised background. I find that space really helpful. I've also got my buddy in the year above, which I don't really speak to him that much, but I know that they're there. And then I've also got my personal tutor, and then I've also got my supervisor. So there's loads of people around to support, and we've got spaces dedicated for that. Is it really amazing as it's made to feel like? No, unfortunately not, guys. It is definitely viewed through rose-tinted spectacles, but I do really enjoy it. So this is a weird thing. I'm trying to explain like how like disillusioned I was in the first month of being on the course, but that's not to say that I don't enjoy it. Like, I absolutely love it. I think it's just a very different idea to what I had in mind. Like, I think again it was that thing of like, I'm gonna go in and learn all this knowledge and then feel really equipped when I go into placement, and it's like, no, you have no idea what you're doing half the time. And I think that's where the disillusionment lies, is that I thought I'd have loads of knowledge and I just don't yet, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. What career paths do clinical psychologists leave NHS working for? So I'm guessing what you mean here is like, where do qualifieds go after leaving the NHS, because many people do leave. Normally into private practice. People normally go into private practice. Any top tips for incoming trainees? I might make a whole video on this, you know. Let me know if you would be interested in that. But I think my main tip is to just like be very compassionate to yourself. Remind yourself daily that you are training, and try your hardest not to compare yourself to your peers. And you are there for a reason. Like, I think you just need to remember those different things. I think those are my main like top tips, and then practical ones maybe I'll put in a different video. Work-life balance, is it harder or easier than it's made out to be whilst on the course? I think it's harder. Well, I don't know, it depends on what your expectations are, but I knew it was going to be hard, and balancing everything is hard. It's just about being flexible and being organised, and you can make it work. I don't think there's ever going to be an equal balance between your personal life and your work life, ever, in any context. Sometimes your personal life will have to come first, and sometimes your work life will have to come first. There will never be a balance. It's just kind of like a juggling act a little bit. Would you say it was worth all of the stress and hassle? Yes, I would, because like I said, I love my job. I love being able to help people, and I can see the value of clinical psychology. It's an amazing profession. We are skilled up in so many different ways to shape services when we get into those leadership roles, to work in such flexible ways because we can use different models. So that means we can serve more people in the community. Like, I just think it's an amazing role to have. It's so, like, the stuff that we can do is so diverse, and I don't think any other role would let me do that. So yes, I would say it's worth all the stress and hassle. Do trainees tend to mix and be friends, or is it cliquey or friendly? Because our cohort is quite big, of course little groups form, but it's not to say that we're not all friends. Like, I'm happy to go up to anyone on my course and like have a chat with them, and I hope they would feel comfortable in doing that with me. So everyone's friendly, but yeah, there are little groups. How do you find dealing with the emotionally intensive placements such as eating disorders or trauma? So in my last placement, it was quite, you know, a lot of people's histories included trauma. And I remember the first week I was there, I found it really hard, and like I would come home and I'd be quite tearful about it, and just think like, why the heck is the world so mean, and like why does this happen to people? And I just got into that like despair. And how I dealt with it, I mean, my faith, so I'm Christian, is a lot, and I don't know how I would deal with the emotional demands without it. So that is my main kind of protective factor, or that is the thing that helps to keep me going when dealing with like emotionally difficult stuff. And then also knowing when I just need to take a step back. So I remember one evening I got home from work and I was like, I just need to be like by myself. Like, I just turned my phone off. I had a really nice like comforting meal, I put a face mask on, and I just binge watched Netflix, because I knew that I needed to be alone and that I needed to kind of recharge properly before going into work again, because if I kept going the way that I was going, I wouldn't have been able to be there for my clients. And so it's just being really in touch with yourself and checking in and giving yourself what you need. And if it means taking a step back, you take a step back. Are you supported in the placements or just left to get on with it? I think this really depends on like your supervisor. In my first placement, my supervisor took a more hands-on approach with my cases, and so in supervision we'd really discuss kind of like the plan, and she would like give me ideas. Whereas with this placement now, it's like my supervisor would be like, okay, so what you can do. Normally he'll kind of just let me run with it, unless there's like a major issue with risk, or if they think no, that's completely like wrong and like not formulation led, and you know, really depends on your stage of training and also your supervisor. A lot of unis talk about diversity and inclusivity, and I'm curious how much this is reflected on the course. You know, this will really depend on what course you're on. I think courses are trying. Are they doing enough? No, we're not at that level yet. And I am genuinely concerned about how many people of colour and people from minoritized backgrounds are coming into training, and I'm not sure if we have the structures to correctly support all of us. Saying that, in comparison to 3 years ago, I'm sure there is a hell of a lot more support and steps towards where we need to be. So we had some really good teaching one day on whiteness in clinical psychology. I found it so enriching, but that was only one day. We have raised this with our course and said that we'd love more of it. Some teaching on diversity hasn't been that good, but other parts have been, and you have to remember that within teaching it's mainly external speakers coming in who aren't affiliated with the course itself, so they'll normally be qualified clinical psychologists who are practicing in the local area. It's really hard for courses to, I guess, manage that and manage how people include it and how they make it meaningful. But saying that, they need to do more. Basically, we're not hitting the mark quite yet, but there have been improvements, and some of it can feel tokenistic, and other times it feels really meaningful and rich. Do you ever regret being on this career path? I don't think I would say regret, but there have been moments where I'm like, I'm only 25 and I'm on the doctorate, and I sometimes think like, oh my gosh, like, have I wasted my youth? Which sounds really weird and almost like ungrateful that I got on so early, but you know, a lot of responsibility comes with being a clinical psychologist, and you know, a lot of my other friends just aren't in that kind of space in their life, and they can really just live their mid-20s as the chaos that maybe it should be, and the craziness that maybe it should be, and I just don't think that I can do that so much anymore. But no, I don't regret being on this path. How do you find managing risk as a trainee? Pretty much the same as I would do as an assistant. So if any risk concerns come up, I make sure that I might have an informal conversation with safeguarding. I will obviously detail it in their notes, and then I'll also raise it with my supervisor as soon as I can. What's the dynamic like between peers? Are there some know-it-alls? Again, I think with any kind of group work setting, yes, of course there are some know-it-alls, and you know what, sometimes it just can be how people come across, and I'm sure there may have been times where I've come across to know it all when I definitely do not, and I think it's just, you know, the way that we present ourselves. But yeah. What's the ratio of research work in DClinPsy? So there's this thing where it's like a saying, I guess, where people say the DClinPsy is 50% research, 50% clinical, and then 50% like personal development. I think it's meant to be like 50% clinical, 50% research, but actually it definitely feels more clinical on my course. Do you ever wish you took a different route? I'm really happy with how I progressed. I'm happy that I had an assistant psychologist post. PWP post never really stood out to me, to be honest, so yeah, no regrets there. And finally, am I actually enjoying it? Yes, I am really enjoying it, guys. Like, it is such a great place to be, and you know, I've dreamt of being on the course for such a long time, so to actually be like living my dream, as cheesy as it sounds, like it is great, and I feel so blessed, and every day I really enjoy going into work, even though some weeks are really, really hard and some weeks I don't want to be there, but for the most part I do. So yeah, I'm always so grateful for all of the support that you've shown me like throughout this whole process. And yeah, if you did like this video, please give it a like and subscribe for more content like this, and until next time guys, I will see you later. Bye.